One question that I get a lot, and understandably so, is basically, who cares about philosophy? Who cares about cosmology? Let's say this. What is a lung? Okay. Well, a lung is this thing here in my rib cage. We could hold it out. We could hold it out here on the table and say, look, this is a lung. Okay. But let's say, I don't know, let's say you're 85 and you've been smoking for 70 years. All right? And then your doctor tells you need to stop smoking because you're going to die if you don't. But then you do stop smoking and then you die because you stopped smoking because the smoking was the only thing keeping you alive. It was the only way you could actually get some air. Because when you did die and they did do an autopsy, where your lung was supposed to be, there was no lung to be found. There was just this black, gooey jelly thing that was all fused around all of your rib cage. But wait, that's a lung? But wait, he's a human being that's alive, so he should be breathing, but he should have lungs. Wait, but what is a lung? And what does it mean to be alive? I don't understand. Wow. But of course, we already know this. We already have it all figured out. But wow, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? Interesting. And I can preemptively say, I'll probably get comments like, I don't get it. You don't believe in anything. You don't believe in, religion? You don't believe in, science? What's wrong with you? What do you believe in? You're just nihilistic asshole. No. Again, prejudice. Because the prejudice there's only these options. You could only live this way. There are no other options. I'm fucking alive. There are plenty of other fucking options. But no, I'm the arrogant one. But wait, it's not arrogant to really believe and know that there are only this limited, Coke versus Pepsi, McDonald's versus Burger King way of looking at the world. You're either an atheist, or you're a theist, or you're an agnostic. It's like, well, wait, those are all actually the same thing? Because without theism, there would be no atheism. Without atheism and theism, there would be no agnosticism. So they actually all need each other because they're all based on the same logical constructs. They're all based on the same cosmology, the same way of looking at the world. So they are really not different. But people go to school, pay lots of money, and think, oh, I have to understand. I have to understand the differences. I have to figure it out. It's like, no, you're just bending over and taking it straight up the butt and loving it and paying for it. Oh, I can still walk. Can I have more? Oh, you want your PhD? Fuck yeah, come on in. And then you walk out of there, oh, my ass hurts so bad. I got so much debt. But fuck, I got it figured out. Kind of. But I don't. But I need more evidence. But I need more data. But, really just running around in this extremely small way of looking at the world. Extremely dehumanized, violent, oppressive way of viewing yourself and other people, and trying to rearrange it and make sense of it when there's no sense to be found because it's not really a thing, which is why you can debate it, which is why there's so much up and down, because it's not actually a thing. But yet, it's this grand achievement of humanity. Where are we? Where did we come from and where are we going? It's like, I don't know. Have you ever noticed that your pinky fits perfectly in your nose? Yet it also fits perfectly in your ear, but you can also put it in your butt. You can also put it down your throat. Have you ever noticed that? Isn't that profound? Oh my god, that is amazing. Whoa, we need to do a study. What are the cultural and genetic implications of the pinky size in relation to the nostril, in relation to the ear hole, in relation to the asshole, in relation to whatever other holes that you might have? What is the evolutionary benefit? What could this mean, and how could this separate us from other primates? And how could this be either evidence or evidence against intelligent design? And is this creationism? Is this God's way of telling us that he really exists? And how many millions of dollars of research can we drain from the balls of the economy to feed our irrelevant, completely obnoxious, ignorant bullshit that we can then turn around and sell as modern science to people and then they will look at us and say, "Oh wow, that's amazing. Will you please give me more? That's so fascinating. I never even thought about it." That's my summarization. There's really nothing else to say. Who cares about these belief systems? Because, I don't have them. I've never studied philosophy. I've never studied cosmology. I really don't care about that. I'm just kind of like doing my thing, or I'm doing my yoga, or my Christianity, or my science, or my lethargy and apathy, whatever. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't do any of those things. Well, the reality is that you do, and everyone does, and there's really not a way to get away from it. In that we will look at ourselves in modern times and think that, we're advanced, we're modern, we are, not superstitious, not prejudiced, all these things. But in actuality, our cosmology, our philosophy, what we think we are, in other words, what we think we are and what we think the world is, what we think that relationship is, that's our philosophy, that's our cosmology. And I'm here to tell you that it is just as superstitious, just as prejudiced, just as biased, just as discriminatory, just as arrogant and egotistical as the things that came before it. The thing is that ours, whatever this modern thing is, won out because it had the best military behind it, and a lot of money, and a lot of time, and a lot of resources to basically wipe out most of the other competing ideas of the world. And the power of understanding philosophy, understanding cosmology, understanding just how biased and prejudiced that we actually are. Here's a few examples of how this might influence our lives. Depending on our philosophy and our cosmology, we might think that it's perfectly acceptable to allow a perfect stranger to saw us open in a room full of other strangers while we are unconscious, basically dead, under the influence of drugs. We might think that's a great idea for us to do, and we might think it's a great idea for the person to do it to us as someone we've never met. They don't really know our names. We don't know their names really. We just heard it maybe in passing. We heard they were good, hopefully. And maybe they're just squeezing us in before their 12 o'clock tea time where they go out and hang with their friends. We might think that makes perfect sense. Totally reasonable way of going about it. Or our philosophy and cosmology might say, you know what, I'm open to anything and everything. It's all good. It all has value. It all has meaning. Well, in that case, we might really get taken advantage of. We might really get screwed over. We might really have no structure, no integrity, no backbone, no fortitude, no organization within our structure. Our philosophy, our cosmology might tell us that we are a worthless piece of shit who doesn't deserve to be happy unless we are suffering and or miserable or serving other people. And there's a lot of examples. Our philosophy might tell us that obviously we are the superior race because of the color of our skin, and it also might tell us that we need to murder everyone else that isn't that thing. Our cosmology might tell us that we are descendants of a superior being, and that's just the way it is. So, as you can see, there's a lot of pretty wide scope of impact that you could have there, as far as how that might influence the decisions you make, the way you treat yourself, the way you treat other people, and really the reality that you experience. And it is highly valuable as something to just actually get in touch with. Because we look at, we could, at least in modern times, we kind of understand, oh, well, ancient people, they said the natural world was alive, or they said that they descended from the sky, or they descended from a mountain, or the mountain was alive, or the mountain was their god. We can look at that and be like, ooh, that's pretty superstitious, because, like, how can you really verify that? How can you really test it? Whereas now we say, oh, well, we came from the Big Bang, and then there was nothing, but now there's something. Or we descended from apes, which came after the Big Bang. Okay, well, we can verify that, right? Well, yeah, obviously we have scientists who have done work, and they can show us the work, and we can look at it. Well, these other cultures, they had things called shamans. They had things called, basically prophets, people who had a foot in both worlds. And they could just as easily, most of the time, explain things. Say, oh, yeah, you can hear this message from God, too. You can see the mountains alive. If you come here, yeah, at this specific day, at this specific time, and we do this dance for this many hours, and we do these incantations and these rituals, you can have this thing, too, and you can see it. It's really simple, really clear, really easy. I don't see what the big mystery is. That's just one example. But we look at what we think and what we believe and say, no, we're better, we're superior, we're advanced, we're modern. In actuality, we're mostly just bullies. We've just destroyed pretty much every other way of looking at the world, and we think we're more advanced because we have better toys. When actuality, maybe out here we're more advanced, but inside we're extremely primitive and ignorant. So, just as a tangent, let's talk about how arrogant and egotistical and bigoted and biased and prejudiced that you probably are. Let's look at some examples. We could say, oh, well, I'm better than everyone else because of the color of my skin. What? Or that's a pretty obvious one that we could say, wait, there's a lot wrong with that. Okay, here's one that's really common. I'm a healer. I heal people's diseases. What? Like the amount of assumptions and egotism and bias and bigotry you have to say yes to get to that place to feel comfortable, confident, and excited to really identify with that. Oof. Another one. I'm a yoga teacher who's healing the darkness of the world by spreading the light of my heart space yoga. What? Another one. I have to be the best mother that I can possibly be, because if I don't, then I won't raise the best kids, and if I don't raise the best kids, then the world's all just gonna go to shit because I have to save the world. What? Or I don't know, another one. No one will love me because I'm 50 pounds overweight, or because I don't have this amount of money, or whatever. It's like, wait. The amount of things you have to really assume and completely bias yourself and prejudice yourself and really toot your own horn to really invest in. Not only that is also the majority of the time life is completely contradicting that all the time. So we're faced with a couple of choices. Invest a lot of time and energy to defend that. Or what's called denial. Or lying to ourselves, which is after a while we don't even realize we're in denial or lying to ourselves. We just know that it's the truth. And we don't even look at it. We can't even look at it. If anyone points it out, if anyone touches it, we get upset. Which is the really interesting thing about everything that I'm talking about is people, we're taught that we really need this. And that this makes us somehow better or superior. And yes, having having integrity, having a fabric, having some understanding is highly valuable, but that's not usually what shows up in the world and what usually people have. Usually what people have is all of these assumptions, all of this arrogance, all of this prejudice, all of this bias that's completely just put aside because it's just the way things are. Or it's just because we are better than other people, that's just the way the world is. Or we have science. The prophets of science, prophets with a PH, not FITS, but one and the same. But isn't it funny that things that are kind of not really real or true tend to require a lot of upkeep, whereas there's other ways of doing things, other ways of living and being that don't necessarily require that if we actually start to get in touch with what our actual experience is as we find it. So that's a little bit about how, just some examples of how we're all extremely arrogant and biased and basically living in imaginary realms that we are just creating for ourselves all the time and then having to exert all this energy to construct. So basically what it comes down to is that pretty much everyone thinks the same thing. And for example, I asked on Facebook, what do you think you are? Tell me, what is a human being? I've asked this question a lot. I've asked it on YouTube, I've asked it across many different websites. I've just observed many different conversations with people in many different arenas and groups, and basically everyone thinks the same thing, which is that somehow this reality is hierarchical and somehow it is mechanistic, and that there's some need for salvation. That's basically what people think. Now, okay, be more specific. Well, pretty much everyone thinks that this thing is some kind of meat suit that somehow is either just a meat suit, or it's a meat suit with a soul somehow attached to it, somehow with it, or it's a meat suit full of electricity that somehow we call energy, or it's a meat suit that has energy but also has a soul. That's pretty much what everyone thinks. And what we could label all of those things is called basically dividing wholeness, is prejudice, is bias, is discriminatory, is oppressive, is subtly violent, is untrue, basically. In other words, it has very little to do with what our actual experience is. But through the power of suggestion, through the power of hypnosis, through the power of ignorance and stupidity and not even understanding that our view of the world is also just another mythology, it's just another bias, it's just another prejudice, then we just really don't even know and consider it. So how this plays out is we show up in the world and maybe we come from a Christian background or a monotheistic background. That basically says, look, you're here on probation, but you are this physical meat suit, and this physical meat world is full of a lot of evil and temptation, but here's the rules. This guy died for you for some strange reason, and this guy created the universe, but somehow he had to rape an adolescent, or not an adolescent, but he had to basically create pedophilia, meaning he had to immaculately rape an underage woman so she could have a baby, but he created the whole world, but he somehow had to do this, but he only did it once, and then that person died. A lot of shit doesn't make sense, but anyways, this is a reality that you have. So basically, you're a meat suit, but also part of you is like separate or different or from that, okay? Maybe you're raised in an atheist worldview that just says, you know what, all this religious nonsense, you don't need it, it's stupid. But we have science, we have rationalism, we have understanding, we have this forebrain that we've developed that separates us and makes us better than all of the other primates from which we came from, i.e., meat suit. Who knows why we're here? It doesn't matter. It's just like basically billiard balls falling all over the place, basically whatever Newton figured out. But Newton was actually into alchemy and a bunch of mythical shit, but we can't really touch and get into that. Let's just totally bastardize and dehumanize what he was actually saying, what he was actually really into, and put it in our basically Christian worldview, which instead of God, we're replacing that with the Big Bang. Instead of prophets, we're replacing that with science. And instead of, the Ten Commandments or the path to salvation, we're going to replace that with the scientific method, i.e. scientism. Interesting. Or we could take the other view, which is, you know what? Religion is just really restrictive. It's just causes a lot of division, a lot of violence on the planet. Science is useful, yeah, but really it's just all about your spiritual journey. You're a spiritual being having a human experience, which is the same thing that everyone else is saying. People are just slightly rearranging it, but telling themselves that it somehow makes them better or different or superior than other people, when in reality, they just took the same shit and mildly, vaguely rearranged it, but have no understanding because they never took the steps back to realize, whoa, okay, this is what this actually is. Which really can get us to a deeper understanding of this, which is, let's say I'm sitting on a chair right now, which I happen to be. Okay, we all know what a chair is, right? Or do we? Do we really know what a chair is? Because the chair is sitting in space. right? But somehow the chair in the space doesn't harm or the space. It doesn't really do anything to the space. Interesting. But somehow I know to sit in the chair versus sit on the floor versus sit on a spoon versus sit on a bowl versus sit on a hat versus sit on a bottle. I understand. I'm going to sit on the chair. Okay. Okay, well, let's say the chair is made out of wood, made out of leather. Okay. So is a chair, or is a chair wood, leather, plastic, and metal? Okay, well, is leather leather or is leather a cow? So is a chair a cow? Or wait, if a chair is made of leather, which was made of a cow, but a cow just eats a lot of grass and water, then is this chair just grass and water and air and blood and a lot of other things? Or is the grass made up of chlorophyll, made up of protein and amino acids, made up of minerals and vitamins? So is this chair chlorophyll, vitamins, amino acids, and protein? Or is it a cow, or is it leather, or is it a chair? I'm really confused. Or is it empty space? I don't know. Interesting. Well, what about plastic? What the hell is plastic? Is it petroleum byproduct? Well, wait, petroleum byproducts are just like supposedly dinosaurs and dinosaur bones and fossils. So wait, is this chair dinosaurs and fossils? Interesting. And this is just within 2 minutes. We can say, well, wait, we know what a chair is. We fucking know what a chair is. Or do we? Because how is a chair really a chair? When I've just taken small examples and shown how it's actually a bunch of other things, which are actually a bunch of other things. And then it can just be like, oh no. What is going on here? So that's just one example to illustrate many of the things that I'm trying to say. Largely is that we think we really have this all dialed in. We think that somehow, in order to heal a disease or change the world, that we're going to do all of these things out here. And usually what happens is we just make it worse. We create more confusion. We create more obligation. We create more drudgery. More, basically, flagellation is usually what we're creating. Now, for example, I saw a thing on Facebook today that said, conscious authenticity is the most valuable asset on the planet today. And after I got done puking, I was like, okay, I get what you're saying, but the level of just bullshit, the level of masturbation, the level of flagellation and guilt and arrogance and egotism and stupidity, it was like, oh God, it's hitting me a little too hard. Where it's like, for one, you can't not be authentic. Because even if you're inauthentic, that's what you are. Because that's what you're choosing to be. So that's kind of, you're being authentically inauthentic. So you can't not do it. It's like, I'm going to be here now. Well, you can't not be here now. Oh, yeah, I can. If I think about the past, then I'm not here now. I'm thinking about the past, but did I go anywhere? No. What I did was concentrate on one thing versus another, which is completely different, has nothing else really to do with actually being here now. It's just directing, focusing the mind, or what your conscious attention is on, because your physiological structure will be here. I could think about tomorrow, I could think about 10 years from now, I could think about being dead, but if it started raining, I can guarantee you my physical body, what I am, will respond. My food will keep digesting, my heart will keep beating regardless. So it takes a lot to really believe in, like, wait, really? That's like what I gotta do? So, cautious authenticity, really what that is just a bunch more obligation and pressure for people. Which I get, it takes perhaps time to get to the place to say, oh, well, I can be honest. Well, you can be honest anytime. But if you start layering it in, well, I'm honest, but it's part of my spiritual journey. It's part of this, it's part of that. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm healing this, I'm healing that. Because of this, so I can heal the world and change the world. And then it's like, oof, that's fucking complicated. That's exhausting. Who wants to do that shit? Well, people who have a lot to prove, have a lot to make up for, have a lot of guilt, have a lot of flagellation and arrogance and egotism and stupidity and ignorance that they have to exonerate, instead of just saying, I'm honest. Because why do you want to be honest? I don't know. It's kind of like, what else are you going to be? Honestly dishonest? Authentically inauthentic? Okay, whatever. It's your choice. It's whatever you want to do. So that's fine. But it's just like, yeah, do you have to layer all the shit on top of it? It's like, man. This is the thing is, if we actually want to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish, it's unlikely to come from all of the complexity and neuroses. It's typically more likely to come from simplicity, from a more place that's actually aware of what's happening now. Instead of just rearranging the same bullshit under a new label and calling it something new. Because this is something that I've really seen, for example, in music. If you want to learn to play guitar, most people that play guitar are just repeating a handful of other guitarists from a certain genre of music. Okay? People in the business, internet marketing space, the vast majority of people are just regurgitating the same shit that everyone else is regurgitating, the same methodologies, the same languaging, the same patterns, all of the things. If we talk about alternative philosophies and spirituality and new religions and new age philosophies, again, just rearranging the same shit. And this is kind of what happens. This is where we're at. And it's extremely predictable and easy to see once you can actually start to see your own bias, your own prejudice, your own discrimination, and actually see how exhausting that is. And see how it really divides you from people. See how it really divides you from yourself and your own experience. And how it probably causes a great deal of stress. Which we could pretty easily say is a cause of dis-ease, meaning an absence of ease. Meaning if you feel stressed, you don't really feel at ease. Thus, stress could easily be a root cause of disease. But you're doing it to yourself because of all of this nonsense that you think you have to be, you think you have to prove, you think you have to demonstrate, because you're carrying all of this unnecessary baggage that you don't even really know about, because you don't have a philosophy, you don't have a cosmology, you don't have any biases, you don't have any prejudices, because you're, a tolerant, compassionate, loving being. Bullshit. You're not. It's not really a thing. Maybe there are rare individuals that can exhibit these things, but those are called rare individuals for a reason. Usually what shows up is people really lying to themselves and really repressing themselves. Because both of those things, compassion, kindness, love, tolerance, understanding, that starts with yourself. And if you're completely ignorant and cut off in denial of your own prejudice, then what fucking good are you going to do for other people? None. And it's just really easy to smell. It's really easy to see, really easy to pick up on. And this is because people think yoga and meditation and spirituality in general is all about sort of repressing yourself and somehow like getting to this still nothing lethargy dial tone kind of space, which it isn't. Nothing to do with it, actually. For example, people think compassion. Oh, I need to be compassionate. Jesus taught compassion. Buddha taught compassion. Lao Tzu taught compassion. Compassion is a universal virtue. Well, no. That's not really a thing. That's just you being biased and arrogant and stupid. Meaning, oh, I understand it in this way. Oh, but other people use this word? Oh, so it just must all mean the same thing. Nope. Not the case. Because if we actually say, okay, well, if we just, for example, let's take people from 12 continents. All right, ask them, hey, people, how do you define compassion? You're going to get 12 different definitions. Let's say you take people from different historical periods in different countries. Ask them, different definition. Let's say you do the crazy thing, which is say, oh, where does compassion come from? Allegedly, oh, Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, well, what sutras and texts really started discussing it? Oh, okay. Oh, wait, but it wasn't in there from the beginning, was it? No. Well, wait, Buddha is allegedly the founder of Buddhism, but there's a 500 to 800 year gap between his life and the emergence of Buddhism as a thing. Interesting. But then the things that are attributed to him are actually all oral because he didn't actually write anything down. Interesting. And he never actually mentioned anything about compassion, did he? Oh, wait, interesting. No. Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, and the Periphery teachings don't tend to mention anything about that. Okay. Well, let's fast forward a little bit and say, okay, well, let's say this historical period when the idea of compassion showed up. Okay, what did they actually decide on it meaning after debating it for 500 years? Well, nothing to do with being a nice person, nothing to do with giving yourself over to blah, 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 blah. It was actually had a lot to do with interconnection, interrelatedness. Okay, well, Buddha did talk about interconnection, interrelatedness. Okay, so maybe there is some connection. But vast majority of people have not ever considered, wait, what does compassion even actually mean? Past my own assumption and ignorance and bias and prejudice. Okay. So that's one way of looking at it. But then another way of looking at it is saying, okay, look, people, we know you're not going to do any work. We know you don't have time. Maybe you don't have the desire. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you're not going to ever read anything or do anything. All right, just be nice to people. Just be kind. Just like love other people. Okay, so there's different ways of which we could understand it. There's nothing wrong with any of it. Compassion is a fucking fantastic thing. But even Dalai Lama himself said on his website, most modern people do not understand compassion and practice it incorrectly. Dalai Lama himself, who is, the patron whatever of Buddhism, eats meat, flies on private jets, is the heir of loads of treasure, likes Rolexes, sits on gold thrones, and the Lamas ruled Tibet for a very long time, and they were so compassionate they never thought to build a school or provide any kind of infrastructure for the people that lived in Tibet. Interesting. And they were so compassionate that they forced a large chunk of the population into slave labor to build their temples. And if people didn't, conform, they were murdered, maimed, tortured, skinned alive, you name it. And wait, this is the patron saint of compassion. Interesting. Oh, I never really even considered it. I just said, oh, I was conditioned with this belief. This sounds like it fits. Now I'm different. Look at me. I'm spiritual now. I'm evolved. Now I'm going to wear mala beads and go to yoga class. Really? But then let's say, okay, yoga, for example. Well, historically, Hatha Yoga, not very old. Not an ancient practice. Functionally, was designed for men. Well, India has a caste system. So that kind of brings a lot into question anyways. India has a caste system with a long history. It has a long history of basically gurus really just having a high position of power and influence and getting money from people. So that's history. That's a historical, cultural context we're not really even considering. But anyways, let's just keep going. And really, the root of yoga in modern times is basically just an indulgent hobby for rich white people. Which this is the amazing thing, it made me really happy when I thought about this, or when I found this out. Because I had been saying that for years, like, man, this yoga, spirituality in general, is just sort of a hobby. It's like an indulgence for entitled, arrogant, egotistical, rich white people. A lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. And that people just kind of treat it like an amusement park. And there's, I have this experience and that experience, and I'm open to everything and anything, but I have no structure and integrity. I'm psychically vacant because I have no boundaries. Okay. So, anyways, I just said that for a long time. And then I saw that the biography of Indra Devi came out, which, if you don't know, that is, she basically brought Hatha Yoga to America in like the 50s and 60s. Who was she? Well, fancy you should ask that. She was a rich, pretty entitled, pretty arrogant, white person who thought, you know what, I have a lot of spare time, I have a lot of money, I have a lot of resources, let's go check out this Oriental spirituality stuff. And then she brought it back to Russia. And then all of her other rich friends were like, wow, this is really something, isn't it? This is really something crazy and far out and cool to do. And then she came to America, and who were the first people that started doing it? I don't know. The rich, entitled, privileged white people, i.e. Hollywood elite. So, historically and functionally, what I have been saying for a long time is actually fucking true, which was hilarious and amazing to discover. And it's still kind of the same, but yet somehow people, this is, oh, I'm spiritual now. Are you? Interesting. Okay. It's crazy. You know, here there were people who dedicated their entire lives for generations upon generations and did nothing else and struggled to achieve certain things and do certain things and have certain experiences that some of them they wrote about and most of it they didn't, and they somehow were gracious enough to pass it on. That's what they did, but somehow you're this modern person who's better or superior, more advanced than them, and you're just gonna like take a couple classes and you're gonna have the same experiences. But I'm the arrogant one. Okay. But I'm the ignorant one. I'm the stupid one. I'm the mean one. I'm the egotistical one. What? Really? Interesting. Or to say, okay, well, all of these disciplines from Tibet, from China, from India, from Japan, they all developed over a very long time, a lot of work. They went through repression and expansion and all kinds of abuse, and some of it somehow survived. Okay? But because I'm a modern person, I get to say, but it's all one, man. I mean, it's all paths lead up the same mountain. Is it? Really? That doesn't sound strange to say? Really? Okay. What do I know? So that's just some examples of how philosophy is important. And then people will say, oh, well, maybe it's just what someone needs on their path. And who are you to say what someone needs on their path? Well, I'm not anyone to say what someone else should or shouldn't do. But I'm also not someone who is not going to say what is really obvious and really clear and really easy to see and understand. So maybe that's what I need for my path. And it doesn't make any difference to me what people do or don't do or think or don't think or believe or don't think. I don't give a shit. It's their own right and opinion to do whatever the fuck they want to do. And it's just like it is mine to make fun of it if I so feel the inspiration. But also, am I really making fun of it? I'm just using like history and using crazy shit like information, like education, like study. Holy fuck, what an asshole. Ugh. So, yeah, this is something that someone needs in their path. I mean, I don't know. It gets back to the question of, you know, philosophy, cosmology, these assumptions, these biases, these prejudices can make people do things. Good things, perhaps. Like, you know what, my philosophy is I'm going to do something nice for someone. Okay, that's cool. Sounds alright. But if your philosophy says, I have to only be nice to everyone all the time and then I'll get a carrot, that's a little fucked up. Versus saying, you know what, just feel like doing something nice right now. I'm going to do it. And then also, well, let's talk about what's being nice. Okay. There's a story that's like, there's a old, rich, powerful Chinese ruler. And he really wanted to be best friends with this bird. Right? It's like rare, exotic fucking bird that somehow flew to his place and he was hanging out with him, wanted to be his best friend, wanted him to stay forever. So he wanted to be really nice to him. Well, his way of being nice to him was giving him all the best food, all the best desserts and luxuries and things that he had that he could get that he really loved because he was being nice. And everyone's probably like, yeah, sounds fantastic. I would do the same thing, right? Well, except for it's a bird. Birds don't eat any of those things. Birds aren't really necessarily, it's not in their nature to eat a lot of those things. So what happened is the bird ended up dying because he was being so nice to it. So nice can also be stupid. You know, we can have the best intentions in the world, but it still can actually be quite harmful. It can be quite oppressive. You know, I'm sure, you know, terrorism, they probably are pretty confident that what they're doing is good and that it's going to make the world a better place. But is it? I don't know about it. I don't know if it is. This is something to decide. You know, someone that's going to saw open your chest, they will probably really think that they're doing something good for you. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Who's to say? But I might also think I'm going to do something really good for my neighbor. I might go saw their chest open, but that's a crime. Now I've committed a crime, but I wanted to be nice. I really wanted to help them out. I wanted to do something kind because, you know, doctors out here, people are making millions of dollars. So I thought, you know what, I'll do it for free. I won't even charge money. But now I'm a criminal. Wait, interesting. Or, you know, maybe there's a guy who gets to a point into his career where he's such a good surgeon, he's got it dialed in, and maybe his job is to cut out lungs. Maybe he has eight operating rooms. He can cut out 8 lungs a day. So he goes into work at 6 p.m. He's out of there by noon. Goes and plays golf. Dude's cutting out lungs. All right, shows up. Walks in room number 1. Oh, is this my 6:30? Are they prepped? Okay. Left one or the right one? Okay. All right. Hands off, glove clean. Room 2. Okay. So it's my 7:30. All right. Okay. Left or right one? Okay, check. Next to the room. Oh, wait. Is this number 6477892? Yep. Okay. Wait, this one was just this chunk, right? Yep. Okay. So that might be a way of operating in the world. Which we could also ask, okay, how many lungs did you have to cut out? How many bodies did you have to cut open before it didn't bother you? Before it didn't make you sick? Before you didn't feel strange? And when did that shift? When did that happen? And were there any other effects? Now again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, because medicine's amazing. Saves lives, obviously. I'm just talking about, let's look at this. What is a person? What is a human being? What is our experience? What are we really? Interesting. And really, in this long-winded way, is just saying, well, what do you think? I'm going to pretty much wager. I'm going to wager this dirty, used Kleenex full of my boogers and snot. But is it my boogers and snot, or is it just impurities from the air? Is it impurities from the air, or is it dead hair and skin cells? Is it dead hair and skin cells, or is it protein? Or is it the rice bowl I just ate? What is it? Actually, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'll wager that you'll probably say some variation on the examples that I gave earlier. Basically, you're some kind of meat tube with some kind of like electricity or some kind of soul attached to it. Somehow these things are like relating to each other. Somehow there's something you gotta do, but it's also you're separate from it. And there's all these other meat suits, but you're separate from the meat suits. And there's this solid physical table and a solid physical chair, and somehow you're separate from it. It's like, what? And that's not a prejudice. It's not a bias. That's not an assumption. Not a superstition whatsoever. That's just the facts. Is it? Interesting. So, yeah. I don't know if there's anything else. I think there was something else I wanted to make fun of, but I can't remember now.